on Facebook. Now, Blessed says, we look cute together. That's myself and Nanaba. Now, who would have thought? And that, well, it's Nanaba's hair that's drawing all the attention. I don't have any on my head, but actually it's what's in Nanaba that I really appreciate. Okay, Nanakwa Misabat Kumsin. Okay, it's all about Nanaba this morning. She just shows up and it's all about her. Welcome to Sunrise. Oh, here's one that's not about us. It's about Mavis JC, a teacher at Two Roses Preparatory School, Galilea Brigade. May you live to see all your dreams come true. Good morning and a very happy birthday to you from Cassius Otto von Labi. And I'm Kwame Sabat Kumsen. You're saying I just heard that Barca have now changed their sponsor to 7-Up. Okay, I won't comment on that one. Nanaba is the football diva. And as you have noticed, she is on Sunrise, but not right now. Right now I've got a gentleman who is in charge of everyone who's ever won the National Farmer or Fisherman Award. Philip Abayoro is my guest and he's here because I want to look at jobs in the Agric sector. Yesterday was May Day, Workers' Day. I don't know how many farm workers felt that there's something to celebrate and how many entrepreneurs thought that, well, I'm going to create some great jobs in the agricultural sector. If you have any ideas on this topic, on a topic that relates to this, well, be sure to share them with me and with Philip via the TV3 Sunrise page on Facebook. Good morning, a belated happy May Day, and welcome back to Sunrise.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Good.
So this thing about youth and jobs in Agric and agricultural entrepreneurship, what are your thoughts about it in general? Is it really a good sector to work in as an employee, as a worker?
In an ideal situation, it is.
In an ideal situation?
Yeah.
Like where you have lots of sunshine, lots of fertile land, and lots of markets for extra food, like in Ghana.
Yeah, where you have deployed technology.
Yeah. Such as the hoes, cutlasses, and shovels. I
want us to go beyond that because if you say you want, you're looking at jobs in agriculture, you see a lot of smallholder farmers, people use a lot of cutlasses and hoes. And we want to graduate. If you graduate from there to mechanize agriculture, that's where you're going to see more creative jobs because you're going to have technical issues at play. Equipment are deployed. You're going to see agricultural scientists, soil scientists. You're going to see the entomologists looking at insects. You're going to see, the people into food processing, technical people who are going to do that. So you can see a line of jobs direct from the production side up to post-harvest, which is marketing and also processing.
There's a beautiful brochure picture you're painting. But what's the reality? Do we really have a situation in Ghana where one can look for a job in a place that has mechanized irrigation, has got tractors, mechanized plowing, has got mechanized crop dusting, for example, and mechanized harvesting, not to mention processing?
We have a few, but not so many. We really have a few. They are large farms, but they cannot employ so much because we need to have more of those farms. We also can have smallholder systems, especially if somebody has one tractor. He equally can do, if he has all the complement, he can do not less than 500 acres with one tractor, with 5 people.
By and large, is the bulk of workers in the agricultural sector, the bulk of people who work on farms and on our boats, on our seas and on our rivers, are they considered to be full-time employees or part-time employees?
You see, we have seasonal employees because definitely agriculture is seasonal. So you cannot employ the people when they are needed. So within a whole year, when the rainy season, you have them doing agriculture. After the rainy season passes, they may be doing other things. But in the fishing industry, it's also cut across because definitely they also have their seasons. You could realize that one boat owner may be employing about 34 people. One single boat. The rest of them are just employees on the boat. So they also employ a great number of people. But generally, agriculture itself, where you can find a job is that the actors themselves into the sector. You see the farmer having 1 acre of farm. You have 5 people to plant. You have 3 people to fertilize. So then you have about almost 10 people to harvest. So by the time he finishes harvesting, he had employed about almost 30 or 40 people, but just for a short period of 3 months and etc. So that is where you could find primary agricultural jobs. But you see, this I would call menial. We're looking at sustainable jobs. And if you're looking at sustainable jobs, then that is where you need to have some processing plant somewhere, picking up the produce at a raw stage, cleaning it up, and then, processing it. So there you can have full, I'll call them permanent or sustainable jobs there. And you could visibly see the actors at play.
Okay, now many of our viewers and those who may be not watching but just listening to us whilst they're doing something else will be wondering, why are we talking about agriculture in the context of jobs right after May Day? Well, for one thing, if you Google agriculture in Ghana and you go to Wikipedia, which is a popular encyclopedia, the first thing it tells you is that this article is outdated. And asks for an update. But then it goes on to say that agriculture is Ghana's most important economic sector. It employs more than half of our population on a formal and informal basis and accounts for almost half of our GDP and export earnings. What are the rights of workers on farms? Would you say that they are the same as the right of workers in our schools, in our hospitals, in our offices, on our roads, and in our commercial enterprises other than agriculture?
Yeah, I will say it's the same because we have a law, and naturally people, it's a natural law that you work for a particular period. When the sun is hot, you cannot, so they work 8 hours. Some even may work 6 hours depending on the jobs that they do. And on site, they take, some are casual, but they take money up front daily when they finish working. We also have people engaging them and paying them monthly. So there are jobs available, but as I said, they are not technical jobs that visibly you could see, fully for a whole year.
Are they safe and dignified? Do our peasant farmers have any kind of capacity to provide for health and safety for farm workers, and also perhaps for sanitation in one or two instances?
Yeah, I would say that for that our farmers are very conscious, and farm workers too, they have Wellington boots. The farmers have been trained, and those into agricultural work, they know when they are using agrochemicals, they have to use masks, they have to wear protective clothing. There's that education, so that is being taken care of.
But does that actually exist? Is that what pertains by and large on most of our farms? So if you see an agriculture worker without the proper safety gear, or just shabbily dressed farm worker, then you know that there's something wrong here. That's not the status quo.
Yeah, there are exceptional cases where education has not gone through very well, so you may see somebody in the farm, no Wellington boots, or there may also be some special circumstances that he cannot afford to buy those Wellington boots, or he's spraying chemicals without the proper gear. There are some cases of that nature. There's a continuous education of the farmers through the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, and as association of farmer-based organizations, we also disseminate information as to how agrochemicals are used, as to how improved agricultural practices are being done. And I'll give you an example. For export crops, and it has now even transcended to local crops, there is what we call the global gap. It used to be Euro gap, where the European traders came out of about 434 rules, guidelines, that you must ensure that in your farm, your workers have good place of convenience. You must ensure that they use appropriate gear. You must also ensure that there's no child labor. All the normal sanitation practices you will have in your own home must be applied to the farm.
Who regulates this? Who regulates the conditions under which people employed in the farming, in the animal and poultry, and in the fishing sectors in Ghana's work? Who is responsible for their conditions of service to make sure that these rules and regulations are adhered to?
Well, the agricultural workers union is there, and they, so far as agricultural workers are concerned, they are in charge, and they ensure that the community, wherever they are, agricultural workers, they are unionized, and they work with them closely and take their concerns on board. So that is being taken care of. But in the general farm practices, it's the farmers themselves too, we are trained to be able to do our own, ensuring that at least those that work under us are, treated fairly. Their health conditions are very appropriate, because it's food we are going to sell, and we should ensure that we do not transfer some kind of diseases to the populations. And you have the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, you have the Plant Protection Agency, PPRS. They also train on agrochemical use, safety of what we call farm work, and etc., so that they ensure that at least everybody that is using chemicals, or you have the agriculture engineering services too, which advise on the use of agricultural equipment. And if it comes to the animal side of it, you have the animal production unit, which is also going to train you how you keep safely animals, and ensure that the usage of any chemical or drugs are being appropriately used. So that is being taken care of here.
Listening to you, you paint such a rosy picture. It somehow seems too rosy to me, just from casual observation as to the conditions of work amongst agriculture workers. When you look at small inner city farms, vegetable farms, urban farms, when you go outside, drive outside of our cities, and you observe the practices as far as the equipment for workers is concerned, as far as their general clothing is concerned, as far as the tools that are available to them, and the facilities such as sanitation, such as basic hygiene when it comes to food and so on and so forth. That what you're saying doesn't seem to harmonize or reflect exactly what one would find just after a casual observation.
Yeah,
How do you explain that?
Let me tell you, and in the main condition of the farmer's environs, if you enter a farmer's house, you go to, meet him, how, he cook his food, how he treats himself, you see it's dignified. But going beyond that, you see, we have a lot of vulnerable people in this sector, especially in the agricultural sector, where they don't have the means to be able to equip themselves. And so in the rare situations, you may see a farmer, not having the gear, or you may also find out that there are a lot of lack of some basic, what they call amenities, if it comes to what they call it, post-harvest equipment. So you may see cassava and then pepper dried along the road, because they are not proper platforms. They don't have tarpaulins to be able to, dry those peppers, and so for that, or there's no dryer, a mechanical dryer. It's inhygienic anyway, it shouldn't be practiced, but there are rules under the Ghana Standard Board about how food should be kept. The Food and Drugs Board is also there, so these regulations are there. But it's like where, the alternative, where the people should have had to find that. And when it comes to personal hygiene, the farmers themselves know that if the hygiene practices are not well, nobody will come and buy the product. So it is a very, they are conscious of that. But going beyond that, in the main city, you could see that those that are into vegetables and fresh vegetables, I would say that some of the water they use come from gutters that, come from people's houses, and it's unhygienic. We have been trying one way and the other to get the farmers registered as I speak to you, and also to educate them. We've spoken to many of them, but the issue is that is their livelihood, and there's no, there's no irrigation system within where they are. Some NGOs have come to put in pipe water there, but these days the water even doesn't flow. So that is a very huge concern to us, because it's not healthy. There's a lot of bacteria that runs through the water, and these vegetables are eaten fresh. We are having some discussions. Very soon we'll be sitting with the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. We've talked to their leaders, and we are putting them together to sit down and find an appropriate way forward, whether they could not be relocated out of where they are, and some facilities put available so that they produce vegetables. Because what they are doing is good, but the issue is that the practices are not good enough for the consumer. So you are right.
Okay, now here's an anonymous post from a viewer. It says, I'm a rice farmer, 23 years old. For the past years, I've tried to apply for a loan, especially from the Agriculture Development Bank, and I've even appealed to the Ministry of Food and Agriculture for assistance, all to no avail. I'm finding it difficult in starting the season because of the high interest rates I had paid to the individual that gave me a personal loan, a private loan. I have 15 employees working on the farm. Here comes government saying youth in agriculture without any assistance that I can feel as an individual young farmer. I cultivate a 26-acre rice farm for which now the demand is relatively high. What would you say to a young person like this that has heeded perhaps your call or the general call for youth to participate in agriculture, has invested his time, his attention, secured 26 acres, that's no joke, secured a loan, a private loan at high interest rate, has 15 employees, doesn't seem to be getting any assistance and is suffering from high interest rate payments? How well do you think the workers of this entrepreneur would be faring?
I know they'll be faring so badly, and what he's doing is contributing to the national economy, and he should be supported. I really say that fighting alone as an individual is very difficult, and that is why it is good to join a farmer-based organization. If he was belonging to a farmer-based organization, if we knew him and we can, follow up his case. We can also, in one way and other, also contribute to, support him. So, and I go beyond that to talk about the Youth in Agric program. I have been advocating that it should be reviewed, and it should be demand-driven, where such people who are already into it can get some support. For one or two reasons, the youth want to do things in their own way. They want to choose which area in the agricultural sector that they should go in. But if we have a policy that will dictate what they should do, we may end up by not being able to attract them into the agricultural sector. So we have been having those discussions.
Well, this is a discussion that's raging across Africa and across many parts of the world that have large tracts of fertile land. Excuse me, how to attract young people to careers, to jobs, to investment in the agricultural sector. Would you say that it's a proposition that has dignity and some degree of promise of improvement to it as we sit here today?
It could be done, and I can say that if we work very well and work on a private-led agricultural sector, the state is dominating in leading the agricultural sector. That's why in African states, a lot of them are dominating. They are involved in trying to do what private sector people should be doing. And when you do that, the private sector will relax. You are leading. So we need to get to a point that the public sector should understand how public-private partnership works. Bureaucracy should be cut. There should be a holistic approach in supporting the private sector to take the lead. You see, if the state is running a program, it's state money, it's state employees, you cannot control them to do whatever they will do. It's the state that controls them. And if they don't do whatever they are supposed to do, you cannot do anything to them. But if it's a private sector system, if you don't come to work for 3 days, you may be fired without a reason. You might have to prove why you don't come to work. If you are late, there are sanctions. If you are supposed to produce so much and you are not getting to that target, you lose your job. So people are conscious to ensure that they do the right thing. But when we have a lot of resources being placed in places that we don't have control over, and they can do whatever they want to do, they become so powerful than those that are supposed to be doing the work. That is where we are in Africa. We need to move beyond that and ensure that the resources are directed to those that can really propel our economy.
You are the president of the National Association of Award-winning Farmers and Fishermen. I always get the order wrong. It's the Association. Award winners.
And Farmers and Fishermen Award Winners
Association of Ghana. Best farmers, best national fishermen. And all the time, each time we talk, you tell me what a great prospect agriculture is, what the profit margins are, how attractive it is, or it should be, if you know it, to investors and potential entrants. I'm looking here at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture.gov.gh site for Youth in Agric, and there are some images on the page that anyone can access, and they don't paint the picture that you say you would like to see? Well, okay, I can see a combined harvester on a block farm at Savelugu, but then when I look at photographs of young people, youth on a block farm on that same location, they don't look like they are wearing work clothes or safety gear or anything of the sort.
Yeah, this is a state-led program. And that is why I'm saying in a private-led...
The picture is different.
Yeah, in a private-led system, the picture is different. And we want to see the private sector being pushed to do this. You see, the youth themselves need to be interested in what they want to do. If I am being given an opportunity to run a youth and agric system in this country, I'm going to first of all let the youth do livestock and poultry, where me and you can go and see count the pigs and count the animals and count the poultry. That is a very huge economic impact, and it will also generate interest. It needs a lot of scientific knowledge. Are you getting the point? That is the start, because we have weakness in being able to meet our protein needs. We are importing so much. That is the first start. The next system I would want to see is a rice system, having youth into that, but then develop the land purposely in communities, put all the necessary infrastructure in place, and ensure that this youth from production can process the rice on site, pack it, and the chain will market it, the same youth. You see, that is where the youth are adventurous. So you cannot put them in a box and want them to do things. So you need to allow them to adventure. And we need to see this happening, because the youth in Ghana, especially in Africa, have grown. So many youth, there's no employment. And the state is always, because it's the responsibility of the state, want to do everything. They should share the responsibility. Look, in some countries, even in Korea, you realize that if you go and tell the government that, look, I can employ 1,000 people and send a proposal to them, you go to the open bank and the bank says it's 7.5% interest. The state system can give you a loan of 1.5 interest, 1.5% if you guarantee you employ 1,000 people. Why? They're going to take taxes back from you. They're going to see you visibly doing something to help the economy. That is the kind of youth system we should put in place.
Well, I was going to jump to fishing, but since you've touched on livestock, I'm looking here at some of the figures that are available, and they date all the way back to 1989, because you said you could count the number of animals, and in 1989 we had an estimated 1.2 million cattle, 2.2 million sheep, 2 million goats, 500,000 pigs, and 8 million chickens in Ghana. And one of the biggest problems was the incidence of cheche fly, and the other was the availability of good grazing land. I don't know to what extent that has changed, but since we're looking at jobs in the agric sector, and also against the background of the often reported incidence of child labor when it comes to cattle herding, in particular in rural areas, I wonder what your thoughts are in that regard. When you look at some of our farmers, they appear to employ young children in very questionable conditions for the purpose of grazing and looking after cattle.
Today you can find, I would say, two less or even none, because everybody has realized that sending a child to school is very important. And the children themselves know. You see, those days where you have this rampant tendency that there was no mobile phone, there was no television reaching everywhere, there were no radio stations. So it is very minimal. You cannot now find even children who want to follow cattle. It is not possible. So you need to employ a fluent person, you need to employ somebody of that expertise. And I will tell you, confidently tell you as I'm sitting now, that we have less labor in the agriculture sector. It is difficult to get labor to work in the agriculture sector. That is the truth, the fact.
Okay, let's move on to the offshore part of our agroeconomy, fishing. In fishing, you don't really need fertilizer. The fish grow wild. We cultivate a small number of fish relatively to our catch. What are the employment conditions in the fishing sector, as far as you know?
I think they are good, because the fishing, you need some expertise about, fish. And they have been there for, that's what they've been doing for a livelihood from generation to generations. They have mastered the work. The only thing is that they need more technology to be able to improve. The fish is wild anyway, but if you use wrong methods to harvest the fish, they will go away and you may not find them. So we have incidents that people use unorthodox methods of trying to get fish. At the end of the day, then we are having the stock being depleted. There's also time that you have to allow the fish to spawn. Though they are wild, they need time, they need peace and quiet for a period. All that needs to be observed to ensure that they can reproduce. And I think that through the Fisheries Commission and the Fisheries Ministry as it is, they have been educating the fishermen when to stop going to the lakes, when to enter the lakes and etc. But I think that there should be a conscious effort for us to look at whether we cannot restock some species, because some of the species alongside are really getting depleted. So that should be looked at. In terms of general conditions, I would say that they need to be improved. You know, it costs money to improve certain things, and that cost is where sometimes the fishermen may not be able to look. Landing base may be one of the things that we think is a major infrastructure that should be done by the state and allow the fishermen to do the rest. I also think that there's a need, because of the competition we face and the low technology. We have other fishing vessels coming from across the world to fish in our waters, and our fishermen don't have that capacity. And when they get the catch, they send it away. They even use methods that are not also good enough. They destroy our coral reef and etc. If we can support our fishermen with more efficient equipment, give them grants, support them to build their capacity, what will happen is that they could have capacity to report these systems through communication to the Navy. They could also even improve the catches that, will also increase the stock of fish that the deficit, reduce the deficit of fish that we need in the country. So all this need a holistic collaboration between the public sector and then the private sector. It also need to allow the private sector freely to move. When I say this, you see, you can have plans, as we do in Ghana. Implementing the plans are where we have the problem, because the actors that we normally think will implement the plans may be from the public sector. But the brains in the private sector are so enormous that they have not been, they don't tap them. So I think that we should try to look at that seriously and ensure that we give people the opportunity. If somebody can employ 1,000 youth or 200 youth, we can put him on a platform on the Youth Unemployment Program, support him. He has a company. He gets his colleagues, they will manage it. We want to see visible things. We should stop trying to go and farm rice, and when there's no rain, we don't harvest. If we put the livestock, we'll see them. Let's do things that are visible, so that at the end of the day, we can improve our livestock system, ensure that now we can reduce the importation. We can also have our poultry sector upscaling. This can be the starting of jobs for our youth. Then we can also look at supporting the technical ones. If you look at the agricultural schools across the country, I would say that they are almost collapsed. But the good thing is that this youth program would have taken advantage of the rehabilitating all the agricultural schools and say, look, if you come and say you want to be a youth to farm, you go there for 3 months training. So if it is poultry you want to do, you go and train and come before we'll support you. If you say it's rice, go to the agricultural school. So you will have a list of youth who even have interest and don't have an idea, and they can be supported. Then you register that this will be the new generation of farming entrepreneurs that you are generating. But, I want to farm 2 acres, 3 acres, I'll plow the land for you. Government will give you fertilizer. Then the person goes to farm, or else farm, because, you've done everything for him. He says, this work is too hard. He goes away and leave the farm. But if he was to go to school, he went to the Agric school where, he learned 3 months. The interest will even be there. He's going to meet his colleagues. What about those who have done Agric? At the end of the day, they come out, there's no job now, they are trying to learn computer, they are trying to learn other things. They could have even been the starting point that would say, look, anybody who has done Agric and you don't have job, report at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, Youth and Agric office. Tell us where you are located. Do you have land? What do you want to do? Are you an agronomist? You see, so we can package these people. That is the starting point. They are the people that can now bring the people in the street to join them and employ them and also train them. But I think we are not doing things the way we should do to really get where we want to go. And I don't think sometimes when we give this advice, it's not of any evil. We want to ensure that at least things are better for our country.
Well, we'll be looking at agriculture from the point of view of entrepreneurship and investment and employment generation. But just to wrap our dialogue up, if you were to advise a young person to look for a job in the agricultural sector in general, in terms of production, would you tell them, to try to go to a crop farmer, a tree farmer, a cocoa farmer, a poultry farmer, a livestock farmer, or a fisherman, a fishing business? Where do you think the best agric sector jobs are right now?
You see, with the kind of where we find ourselves now, and if you're a young man and you want to go into agric, I would say first of all, go to poultry. Poultry of livestock. Start with poultry and livestock.
In terms of seeking employment, getting a job.
I want you to create a job for yourself. I'm looking at people creating
job creation.
Job creation, because if I will say you can go and join fishing. If you want to get a job and you believe that you don't, go and see the fishermen. They will put you on the boat. They will train you. You can grow and become a very strong fisher. You can also go to a portrait. You can go to a crop sector. You can go and see the farmers also want to employ people, but that is getting employment to work for somebody. But I want agric because agric can easily make you who you will be through your own effort. If you start on your own and you are supported a little, you will grow up to become big. So people come to me and say, look, I want to go and work in the farm. I said, okay, go work for 2 months. If you have your own land, start something. You get the point. Start something, because if you get a good yield, you can easily be your own employer. And we need to encourage people to do that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Philip. Next time you come, I would like us possibly to touch on the chances of us exploiting the emerging niche market of organic farming, health food in Ghana, considering our relative access to resources and inputs and implements. I'm wondering whether organic farming is something that we could really exploit and make into a major income earner for ourselves as individuals and for ourselves as a nation. I've been talking to Philip Abayori. He's the president of the National Award winners of Best Farmers, Best Fishermen. King Rudolph Telfer, you've posted a really nice question here. So which agency ensures that the minimum wage is adhered to? Well, it looks like this conversation has opened up either a treasure chest or a Pandora's box, depending on whether one is an optimist or a pessimist. And so here's King Rudolph Telfer asking which agency ensures that the minimum wage is adhered to, well, as far as farmers and fishermen are concerned.